Alrighty, so what's going to be in my top 10 for 2020? We got Dune, Fast 9, Black Widow. What? Oh, that's right, all of those movies got delayed to 2021. What's going on, you guys? James here, and yes, I'm so excited today to finally talk about my top 10 movies for 2020. Now, I'm gonna put a little asterisk by this because, guys, there are some huge awards contenders that I have yet to see. Unfortunately, screeners have not gone out for some of these movies that are releasing right before the Oscars cutoff date, which is February 28th, if I'm not mistaken. So I have not seen Nomadland yet. I haven't seen Anthony Hopkins in The Father, but I have seen some films like Minari. I've seen some of these bigger awards, heavy hitters, and I can't wait to tell you where they rank on my top 10 list. Now, before we get started, guys, if it's your first time here at the channel and you love talking about movies just like me, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell. We're so close to 5,000 subscribers, and it's all because of you. And if you haven't already, smash that like button. And guys, give me your top 10 in the comments as well. And hey, let's get wild. Throw down below some of your honorable mentions because that's what we're about to hop into right now. So here are some films that fell outside of my top 10, but they are still worthy of a mention. Right at the top is Palm Springs, that movie with Kristen Milioti and Andy Samberg. Their chemistry together is unreal. Kristen Milioti and Andy Samberg, I want them in more movies just like this. This movie's hilarious, and Palm Springs is one of the more original films of the year, and because it's a comedy, some people might overlook it, but if this were to get nominated for Best Original Screenplay, I would be so happy. Max Barbakow did an amazing job with this movie. Now, moving on to another film that I thought would make my top 10, but it fell just outside of that, is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, starring Viola Davis, Chadwick Boseman, Coleman Domingo, and so much more. This cast is unreal. The acting here is on another level, and I think Chadwick definitely gets nominated for Best Actor in this film. This is a Chadwick Boseman movie. For as good as Viola Davis is, sometimes the movie kind of scales back from giving her the spotlight and gives it more to Chadwick Boseman and his co-stars. Now, I think that the movie kind of fell a little bit short in terms of pacing, and it wasn't as heavy as I thought it would have been, so it didn't give me that bit of emotion that I wanted, but it is still a movie that is worthy of being one of the best of 2020. And then you have The Vast of Night, an amazing directorial debut and also a very darn good sci-fi movie that you should watch on Prime Video. There's Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Did I get that right? And here's a short film that deserves to be talked about, Canvas, which is a Netflix exclusive. I just want to see more from this director. This is a short film that said literally nothing. There's no dialogue, but it really said so much. And then rounding out my honorable mentions are Mank, Borat's subsequent movie film, and The Way Back. The Way Back was actually my number one of 2020 pre-COVID lockdown. And there is something we do have to talk about, which is Mank not being in my top 10. I know it probably will get nominated for a ton of awards. It might even win a lot at this year's Academy Awards ceremony, but Mank is not as great as I really thought it was going to be. My expectations were here, and I came out of the movie feeling like I was down here. Amanda Seyfried is the best actor in that movie, and while Gary Oldman's pretty good, I don't think it's one of David Fincher's best, and it didn't really hit a home run at the end there. And Borat, man, what can you say? Sacha Baron Cohen is just such a versatile actor. And it's funny that we mentioned Sacha Baron Cohen because now we're getting into my top 10 with number 10, The Trial of the Chicago 7, directed and written by Aaron Sorkin and starring Sacha Baron Cohen himself, Eddie Redmayne, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and Mark Rylance. The screenplay here was outstanding. I'm a big Aaron Sorkin fan. I loved Molly's Game, and I know a lot of people didn't, but I was really curious to see how Aaron Sorkin would be in the director's chair once again, and I think he really nails it. The movie is very snappy, the dialogue is amazing, and the pacing of the movie is pretty darn good. I enjoyed a lot of the courtroom drama scenes. However, there is a weird lull in the second act, and even though this is a really solid ensemble cast, I just think that there are 9 more movies that are a little bit better than this film. And what I will say is, if you haven't seen it, I really feel like you need to dedicate some time to this movie because it's going to knock your socks off. Gosh, I don't know how Aaron Sorkin continues to write scripts that are this good. Now moving on to number 9, The Devil All the Time, directed by Antonio Campos, starring Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, Riley Keough, and Bill Skarsgård. And I mean, we can go on and on for as many good actors as there are in this film. Another ensemble cast and another Netflix movie that's on my top 10. The Devil All the Time was really interesting for me. It's quite the enigma because it's Tom Holland outside of the norm. We're used to seeing him as Peter Parker or Spider-Man or both. I mean, really, you can classify him as both. He does a great job as both of those characters, but I was curious to see him in a dramatic role. And the trailer sold me. I was curious, but the final film is breathtaking. It's so good. It's very heavy. Now, emotionally, it's not going to be for everyone because there are some themes that this movie deals with that might be just too much for the viewer to handle. For me, I was able to sit through it and stomach it, barely, but I was able to get through it, and even though I had to turn my head sometimes, I really was stunned by the performance of Tom Holland. And honestly, this is what proved to me that he can act outside the realm of the MCU, and I loved it. So now we get to move on to number 8, Pieces of a Woman, directed by Cornel Madrusco and starring Vanessa Kirby, Shia LaBeouf, and Ellen Burstyn. This film, in the first 30 minutes, I was laying down watching this, right? And I really felt like I never took a breath. That's the kind of opening that this movie has. It's a one-shot sequence of Vanessa Kirby giving birth. And first of all, the birthing process seems so painful. And second of all, I could not believe what I was witnessing. Vanessa Kirby and Shia LaBeouf together were a force, but individually, I think Vanessa Kirby steals the show. It is a shame that Shia LaBeouf got involved in this lawsuit and a lot of controversy following the release of this movie. However, I still think he gives a very good performance. I just know in my heart of hearts that Vanessa Kirby has to get nominated for this film. She deserves a Best Actress nomination. This is the turning point in her career, and if you haven't put her on notice, this movie's going to put her on notice for you. If it wasn't for that third act, I think Pieces of a Woman would have been in my top 5, but I don't think that the film executed all the way down the stretch. But it's still a great film, guys, so I really recommend it. Now we're going to move on to number 7, Promising Young Woman, directed by Emerald Fennell, starring Carey Mulligan, Bo Burnham, and Alison Brie. This is Emerald Fennell's first movie, and guys, you probably heard it from so many other critics, but let me be another one to tell you. You need to watch Promising Young Woman. For a debut feature-length film, this is probably my favorite by any director. I mean, Emerald Fennell not only delivers a very original screenplay, but her vision bleeds through from start to finish, and we get an ending that I absolutely love. I know not many people like it. It's going back and forth for so many audiences, but I loved how the film was wrapped up, and Carey Mulligan just brings home everything that this film has to offer. This is her best performance in her career, and I, again, like I said with Vanessa Kirby, I can see her getting nominated for a Best Actress award. Alrighty, so let's move on to number 6, One Night in Miami, directed by Regina King, starring Kingsley Ben-Adir, Eli Gore, Aldous Hodge, and Leslie Odom Jr. This is simply a breathtaking film by Regina King, who again is in the director's chair for the very first time. Now, I was really back and forth. I had this movie at number 5, and then I kind of moved it down a little bit, only because there is this issue in the middle where I feel like maybe they linger a little too long in one setting, but it switches gears, and there are films in my top 5 that are maybe just a little bit heavier in a good way in terms of the substance that it delivers. But I mean, man, One Night in Miami is a film that you need to see on Prime Video. The ensemble cast here is unreal. Leslie Odom Jr. very well might win the Best Supporting Actor award. I couldn't get this certain rooftop scene out of my head between him and Kingsley Ben-Adir, and even though this film is very much their movie, I love the fact that Aldous Hodge and Eli Gore were able to flex their acting muscle a little bit too. But man, I really have to give some props and kudos to Kemp Powers. I know I said it in my review, but guys, not only did he co-direct Soul, but he wrote this film and the play that it was based on. I was just blown away. Guys, One Night in Miami is... it's a film that I think when you finish it, you're going to remember it for a very long time. At least that's the way it is for me. So then, let's move in to my top 5. Can I get a drum roll, please? You know what? On second thought, I don't want to talk about drums because it makes me think of Whiplash. J.K. Simmons is a teacher I don't want to have. Coming in at number 5, Soul, directed by Pete Docter and Kemp Powers, starring Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, and Graham Norton. Now, let me preface everything great I'm going to say about this movie with a little bit of criticism. Guys, I really hope in the future we get Disney Pixar movies that involve a story about a black or a person of color that is going to be someone in their own body for the entirety of the film. I'm tired of taking black people out of their own bodies and placing them in animals. We saw it in The Princess and the Frog, and I'm really hoping that Disney Pixar, they listen to this bit of feedback and they will start developing stories directed and written by black men and women that are for black people. I mean, I just am tired of seeing the body switches. It just didn't work for me as much as I thought it was going to, but it's the message and the overall theme of this film that really hit a home run for me. The animation is great. Yes, it looks so good, but it's what this movie says that really resonated with me. As a kid, I thought I had a dream of being a sports broadcaster. Then I thought I was going to be a doctor. Then I got older and thought I would be a sports reporter, and now I'm a film critic. So I found my spark a little bit later in my life, but I'm very glad that I found it, and that is Joe's entire journey. He needs to find his spark, his motivation, and what gets him going in life. And I love the performance by Jamie Foxx. I actually think it's one of his best, if not his best, since Ray, and that is huge. Tina Fey does a good job alongside him, and Graham Norton is hilarious. I think Soul is definitely worthy of being in the top 5 for not only myself, but I see it in the top 3 even for so many other critics. It's a great film, and the barbershop scene, boy, that is probably the best scene in 2020. Alrighty guys, moving on to number 4, Tenet, directed by Christopher Nolan, starring John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, and Elizabeth Debicki. If you missed my review, I mentioned it there, but I'll say it again. I watched this in 70mm IMAX on the biggest screen in South Florida, if not the entirety of the state, and I was blown away. Literally, my eardrums probably are still ringing from that day, but it was such a joy. It was the only way I wanted to watch Tenet, and I loved everything about this film, at least almost everything. The weakest part of this movie is the villain. I don't think Kenneth Branagh's as convincing. He's a little too over the top, and the sound mixing is pretty bad, guys. I'm not gonna lie. When I rewatch this movie, I'm gonna put on subtitles. But I love John David Washington in this lead role alongside Robert Pattinson. Both of them have great chemistry, and I know you've heard this before, but this is Christopher Nolan's Bond film. The concept is very confusing. Even though I understood it the first time I watched it, it took me a few hours to come down and collect my thoughts. It's a very complex plot, and I love exactly how it was executed. And then you have Ludwig Göransson's score that is the best of the year, and I got hyped. I kind of wanted to run through a wall at one point, and I was just on the edge of my seat, bobbing my head and also sweating. Actually, maybe that was just because it was hot in the theater, but I was sweating. As funny as it sounds, this was my number 1 of the year for many, many months. But the films that we're about to talk about now, my top 3, just stunned me. I was left sitting in the same spot I was in when the credits ran at the end, and Tenet, even though it did that for a little while, I think that these films are just even better than this Christopher Nolan movie. So let's get into number 3, Sound of Metal, directed by Darius Marder, starring Riz Ahmed, Olivia Cooke, and Paul Raci. This is a film that's going to transform your perspective on life, and that is exactly what Sound of Metal did for me. Now, we take, I think, for granted the ability to hear every day. I mean, I know when I wake up, I, of course, am very thankful to see, to hear, to smell, but this is a movie that stars Riz Ahmed in a role that I've never seen him in before. It's transformative. You go from a character who is careless, he's just really going hard for his band, well, him and his girlfriend's band, and I love the fact that him and Olivia Cooke had time together, but the real crux of this movie, the thing that about this film that really just hit home for me, was Paul Raci and Riz Ahmed's relationship. Their chemistry was great. It was the wake-up call that Riz Ahmed's character needed, and Darius Marder really just allowed the movie to linger, to marinate in a great way. The sound design here is probably going to mess with some people, especially when Riz Ahmed's character goes through hearing loss. You're going to hear ringing, muffled noises, and it's going to take a little bit of getting used to, but it's definitely made me more mindful of how loud objects are, or sounds are, or even movies are around me. And then there's the story. Again, it just really made sense for the film, and I love the ending. It just blew me away. Yeah, you know what? I kind of want to watch this movie again now. So moving on to my top 2 with number 2, Da 5 Bloods, directed by Spike Lee and starring Delroy Lindo, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., Jonathan Majors, and the late great Chadwick Boseman. This is the best ensemble cast of the year. All of them have a very natural chemistry, and it's very interesting that Delroy Lindo's character is a war veteran who now supports Trump, and after everything that's gone on in the nation, not only this year, but for the past 4 years, it's crazy in a way to see how his character transforms over time and how we almost forget that he is a supporter of, well, a president that definitely doesn't care too much about the black community. That's all I'll say about that. But what I will say is that this film is just incredible. This was one of the 2 final Chadwick Boseman films as well before his unfortunate passing, so it added a lot more emotional weight. And what I love the most that Spike Lee does here is that he explains the Vietnam War through the eyes of black soldiers. We usually get a lot of Vietnam War movies with a white cast, or predominantly white cast, and I'm not that much of a fan of those films anymore, to be honest. I've grown out of that genre, but I do love the fact that we're getting into Vietnam War, the effects of PTSD on black soldiers. That, for me, was a different take, but it was awesome. It was exactly what I thought Spike Lee would do as well. He delivered a very unique movie. And I definitely see Chadwick Boseman getting nominated for a Best Supporting Actor award here, even though he's not in the movie a lot. He's still very impactful. And I'm not going to move on to number 1 without saying Jonathan Majors, boy, you killing it. So my number 1 movie of the year, Minari, directed by Lee Isaac Chung, starring Steven Yeun, Yuri Han, Yoo Yeon Jung, and Alan S. Kim. Before we get into this, guys, nominate Yoo Yeon Jung and Steven Yeun for an Academy Award, all right? Just do it, guys. Minari is a movie that I had been anticipating for a while. Ever since I saw the trailer while sitting in my car, ready to go to work, I was floored. This is a film that is very minimalistic in a way. There's nothing flashy. There's not even a lot of CGI, if any, in this movie, maybe at the end. But what I will say is that Lee Isaac Chung does an amazing job at just writing a very simple script and allowing his actors to explore every area of it. The family dynamic here is beautiful, and it is a movie that moved me to tears. It's a beautiful story about a Korean family that is just trying to live the American dream, and I really hope people don't just pigeonhole this movie into Best Foreign Language Film. It deserves the Best Picture nominee. It's one of the most incredible movies that I've seen, and it is the most incredible movie that I have seen in 2020. I was just so happy for Steven Yeun getting this chance, and honestly everyone involved, because even Alan S. Kim is great, and Yoo Yeon Jung just stole my heart, guys. So I really do recommend Minari. I know it hasn't been widely released yet. I think I saw it when it was in a more limited run, but when it does get that wide release next month, I really do recommend this film. So there you have it, guys. That is my top 10 list of 2020. Like I said, haven't seen Nomadland yet or The Father, but when I do, I'll add it to my Letterboxd list. I'll add that in the description below and in the comments. Guys, I want to know what you have to say. What is your top 10? Give me your list, and which movies do you think that maybe I should have switched around? I always love to see how you guys play with my list as well. Alrighty, y'all. Well, I'm gonna really go ahead and get started on my 2021 list. Can't believe we're already here. Again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you at the next screening.